My name is Paul Fast with HCMA Architecture Design out of Vancouver. We left off before the lunch break in Vancouver, and I'm going to take you back there because it's such a wonderful place. So I'm here to present the design for the Harry Jerome Community Recreation Centre, which is actually in North Vancouver. And of course, as you know, Vancouver is located on the west coast of Canada. And North Vancouver itself is just north of the city of Vancouver proper, and is really a city that is caught between the mountains and the ocean. And it's a setting that really influences how the city has grown up and what it means to be in the city. The mountains are a really important part of being North Van. People use the mountains and views to the mountains to wayfind themselves through the city, so you know where you are in the city based on where you reference to the mountains. It's also a place where you go for the lifestyle. So people go to North Vancouver to be outside, to be in the mountains and to recreate, to enjoy life and be outside. And this is the character of the forest that would have been on the site prior to its development in later years. It's also a place that's profoundly influenced by topography. There's these large ravines and rivers that bisect the North Shore, and the experience of moving around and over and through those ravines is really a uniquely sort of North Shore experience. So the site itself is located just on the northern margin of the actual urban part of the city as it transitions into a more residential character. And you can see here, there's a number of really challenging complexities to the site. It's almost a full city block in size. And there's an existing theater on the south side that had to remain. The program comes from an existing building on the south side here that is, the building's falling apart, it's on its last legs. So this project is the replacement for that on the northern part of that site. It's flanked on two sides by significant arterial roads that really limited where we could get on and off the site with cars or with traffic. Another significant feature to the site was its grade change. So we have almost 2 stories of elevation difference between one side of the site and the other. But perhaps the biggest challenge with this project was really around the nature of the programming and the amount of it. This is a municipally run and owned community center, and so all of the programming around pool spaces, ice-based sports, including curling, fitness, seniors programming, daycare, children's youth programming, all of that had to fit on the site, and those are really operationally complex program types when you slam them all together under a single roof. So the question was really, how do you take the complexities of that site and give people an experience that is rooted in what it means to be on the North Shore of Vancouver from a lifestyle perspective? So we started by just massing it up, but realized very quickly that to have a meaningful engagement with nature, we need to be more aggressive about how it was introduced to the site. So we cracked the building open and ran this outdoor ravine space right through the heart of the building itself. We also focused heavily on what we call the spaces between. So these are areas between the larger volumes that we use to kind of infuse social characteristics into the larger building volumes, and just really allow zones for social interaction and condensing that to occur. A lot of the programming is what we would call sort of more traditional high-performance sports boxes. And these are building volumes that have really large blank walls. So we put those on the back part of the site and we buried them into the grade to minimize the impact of those larger blank wall surfaces on the urban realm. But we were also interested in sort of trying to rethink what it means to recreate. And so we started looking at examples, these are from Copenhagen, of more informal, casually programmed recreation types that have a much lower barrier to participation. And we started sprinkling those between the outdoor ravine space and those harder edged sports boxes. And this was really in an effort to kind of create a more inclusive, sort of softer edge to those high performance spaces. All of that was stitched together with this 2-story circulation bar that really transitions you from the higher part of the site on the right to the lower part of the site. Parking, we put it all below grade to minimize the impact of parking on the urban realm. And another principle, this is the ground floor plan, was giving people an equitable way to get to the front door, whether you were in a wheelchair, on foot, by bike, or by car. So you can see here the strategy of taking the parking, part of the parking, burying it in the north part of the site, but then daylighting it to the same lobby space that everybody else arrives at. So it's really everybody arrives through the same front door. That was a really important principle for the client. I'm going to take you on a little journey as you approach the site. One of the strategies that we used was a series of shifting or stacked boxes. And that was really to start to humanize the scale of the building when it's a whole block long. That can be a foreboding prospect. And so that helps us to kind of bring down the scale. This is a look through the heart of the ravine space as it transitions up through the site, really cracking open that larger volume. We mirrored that outdoor ravine on the inside with a series of cascading social spaces looking towards the east and then looking out towards the west through that main circulation spine. This is the pool space, and another important strategy was framing views of the mountain so that people could wayfind themselves in the building in the same way they do in the city, which is views out to the landscape. Moving up to the second floor, these are the larger volumes that all frame into that second circulation space. And if I were to take you through that outdoor ravine space, we are on the west coast. It rains an awful lot. And so it was important for us that the project be as good on a rainy day as it was on a sunny day. And that works for the climate and all conditions. This is one of those more casual recreation spaces that softens that high performance edge to the project. Arenas are typically designed as black box spaces, and we rejected that and said we need to engage these spaces more fully in public circulation and views to daylight and natural ventilation. The third floor was really about bridging across that ravine space and connecting all of that with a really kind of inherently intuitive wayfinding circulation loop. And then the crowning jewel here really is the fitness space, which is on the fourth floor and is aligned north-south and is really about, again, very specific framed views to the North Shore Mountains so that when you go through the effort of climbing up 4 floors and sweating it out on an exercise bike, your reward is really the views that you get from those spaces. And this is an axonometric here that starts to indicate kind of how the individual program spaces were really resolved in individual boxes, and the way those boxes interface and intersect is the start of the kind of the richness of the experience. Just some sections that take you through the outdoor ravine space. You can see how we've resolved taking people from the higher side of the site, cascading down to the lower piece, and mirroring that on the inside of the project as well. Those floating bars, and you can get a sense as to the kind of civic proportion of that plaza on the front space underneath that cantilevered multi-purpose room. That was a really important space for the client. That idea of fracturing open boxes to allow people to circulate around, underneath, and through, and also bring light and air into a very large building type. And again, just that sliding volume idea to start to break down the scale of the building, and that fitness space on top that really stretches out and is that beacon on the top floor. It's also really important that we create a sense of, with all of the stacked boxes and the shifting volumes, to create a sort of underpinning rational logic. And so we worked with a 1.5 meter spacing to really start to set up an organization that would allow us to detail well and simply and cleanly, and that would really drive through the planning for the entire project. So that organized facades, it organized interior planning, ceilings, and the rest of it. When you're in a rainy climate, you spend a lot of time underneath things to get out of the rain, whether that's trees or umbrellas or building overhangs. And so we wanted the spaces that you spend, or the time you spend underneath spaces in the building, to have a special character to them. So we treated them all with a cedar soffit to kind of denote the special character of that space. Doing stacked boxes in a pure form is never as easy as it looks, and so there's a lot of work that goes into coordinating the structural and the mechanical systems to allow that really pure expression of those boxes. And then the materials we used were really simple materials. These are materials that are used in everyday projects, but detailed in sophisticated ways to provide a different experience and a different language for the project. And of course, one of the biggest palettes that we had to work with was really nature itself. And so that's where we got to. It was hopefully a project that gave people a better understanding of what it means to be on the North Shore and really connected them to the geography of that place.
Good, thank you very much. It's actually got a lot in common with the school project that we saw.
Yeah.
It's not white. Yes. Yeah, but very similar and equally very beautiful, I think.
Different climate.
Yeah.
Can I kick off? Or?
Yes.
The immense
competence of the scheme is beyond question. And the magic of the scheme, I'm getting it, I'm feeling it in the palette and the materials and the color, and you talk about the weather, and it must be a good site in the wet and all this shit. But to bring the magic fully out, I need you to explain to me, why are the particular volumes where they are? What caused you to, in shifting and manipulating that space in such a competent manner, why were you putting things quite where they were? Views of the hills, I sort of throw up a few clues, views of the hills, using the levels of the site, but that's what I want to feel.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a good answer.
Yeah, no, there is, and there's an inherent logic toward, just from an operational perspective, a lot of those volumes have very specific rules around where they need to be. Access to the paid zones, for example, all have to be behind a certain control line. So that starts to set up kind of a planning rationale that kind of puts major things in the right place. But then there's also the user experience part of that, which is equally important, right? So, in the initial scheme, we actually had very much more limited bars crossing that outdoor ravine space, and we were finding that we weren't getting the character of space that we actually felt the site deserved. And so we started to manipulate the bars to actually achieve some of those covered spaces and to create that experience that we felt was more representative of what it means to be on the North Shore. And then views, as you mentioned. There's a really inherent complexity to the circulation when you deal with so many different stakeholders in a building that starts to really kind of underpin a lot of that planning.
I did like your rendering in the rain. I think we've had a few questions today about show us the building in the Arctic winter or whatever. So I think it was really nice for you to tackle directly your less than perfect conditions and show us how well it functions in that.
Thank you.
And I'm actually unpersuaded by this drawing, and in a good way, not a bad way. I'm unpersuaded about what's inside and outside of that building. The outside looks to me to be inside, which is great.
Yeah, thank you for a nice presentation. I was just wondering, also if I look at this rendering, how is it exactly because to get this perfect with your construction, is this steel construction, or are there earthquakes in Vancouver? Or I cannot almost imagine that it will really look like this. And I hope it will look like this, but because these are big cantilevers. And
you've hit on one of the major technical challenges. So we do get earthquakes, very large ones in Vancouver, or we have a very strict seismic code. Yeah. And so it's based on a concrete substructure, but then it transitions to a steel structure up on top. And so you can see, for example, what we haven't.
Where does it change?
At the ground floor plan.
This floor.
Yeah, that's right. So the parking structure is below you, and everything above, with the exception of cores and shear walls, is all steel structure. So there's elevator cores that are running up, that are kind of shish kebabbing up through the plates, as it were, and that provides a lateral stability for the project. And it allows us to kind of keep bracing off of the outside of the building and keep the volumes fairly transparent.
Hi, can you talk a bit about the yellow spaces that you showed us, the circulation areas?
Yeah.
Just what will their nature be? Architectural resolution?
Well, I would say that a couple of things about that. There's circulation spaces for us are never just circulation spaces. They're actually opportunities for people to bump into each other, for all sorts of social life to occur. And so we actually fight very hard to oversize them and to give them a layer and character around seating and access to kind of just areas of respite. They've also, in this project, been deliberately or sort of oriented to never dead end in a blank wall. So you're always traveling towards a place, and you're always traveling towards a view, or able to kind of understand where you are relative to the exterior.
That's the loop, is it? Where when we look up there.
Yeah. So the loop would be just on the
other side of this block, and yeah. And what's the status of it? Is it all documented and funded and everything?
It's working its way through the approvals process, so it's been approved at the schematic design level, and that's kind of what you're seeing here is the resolution of it at that level. And so they should be proceeding with construction in the next year or so, once we've gotten through detailed design.
I think it's good. But for me, again, I think it builds on Francine's point, which is that these are, and yours, these are drawings of a future building. But the elegance of the detailing, you know, at the moment it looks so fresh and crisp. So take the corner of the top slab there, and just take us round that one. Glass coming down over concrete with window mullions and note trans and window mullions coming down to the sharpest of edges. What are you trying to? Well, it's obvious what you're trying to achieve. Convince us you're going to achieve it.
I wish I had a detail to show you.
In 1 minute.
We have done details like that before. It's really around how you handle the kind of the spandrel condition on the edge without creating thermal bridging issues. And so, but we have done these bypass details before. And one of the keys is kind of making sure you get enough ventilation, you know, at that lower level and at the upper level to make sure that you're not getting different air or condensation on those pockets, really below and above. The other big challenge, you know, which is a challenge, is from an operational perspective, you've kind of got a gap there that you've got to cover up with something, right, to keep the kids from throwing Coke cans down there and whatnot. So, you know, those are all things that will have to be worked out.
You've committed to it now, so we expect to see it like
That's
that.
right.
Well, Richard, in a time when there's such a lack of attention to design development through to production, it's reassuring to hear an architect talk in terms of design being taken through detailing.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, no, we're very committed to that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's time to, there's the award. Present to you your award, which is that the wrong one again? Director's Award. I think we need to unwrap another one, I think. Winner of Future Project Civic. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.